Hello and welcome to Vergecast, the flagship podcast of perceiving the world through screens.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That thing I told you about.
It's accurate.
That no one believed me about.
So does that mean our podcast is like very good at first and then sort of slowly gets more annoying over time?
Yeah.
You fluctuate.
It's magic until it's not. It's the Vergecast. It's very good. Quite a lot going on this week.
Yeah.
As we're recording, we are expecting breaking news from Microsoft about the future of the Xbox.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're just going to react to that in real time. And then we'll have Tom Warren come on the next show to explain what's going on. But we'll react to that in real time, I promise you. I'm your friend Nilay. David Pierce is here.
Hi. I should warn everyone that I have a deeply sore throat, so the like sexy smoldering thing I'm doing is just a one-time thing, and it will not be this good to listen to me every time.
No, you should keep it. We're gonna do an AI that we're gonna do a sexy smolder AI.
I love
OpenAI.com/sexy smolder. Alex Cranz is here.
Deeply disappointed I don't also have a cold right now.
You can fake it big.
Yeah, I could drop it a little lower. I don't even know how far to go.
This is when we first started podcasting with the Engadget podcast like ages ago. I was like, I should have a podcast voice.
Yeah.
But I gave up on that immediately.
You have to. Otherwise you forget about it. And then you're like, oh, how are you? This is my normal voice. And people are like,
You went with Mickey Mouse?
that's my normal voice. You don't, I actually do a Verge voice. At home, I talk like this all the time.
God.
Can you do an impression of your podcast voice for us, just real fast?
I think Decoder is my fake podcast voice.
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
It's a pseudo NPR.
I think of that as like Nilay Patel in his study swirling a brandy.
Yeah, that's a
That's
podcast.
the Nilay
voice.
vibe of
That's the
Decoder.
same.
Yeah.
That's the same voice.
That's right. That makes sense.
It's
Okay.
drunk Ira Glass. That's the Decoder voice. That's what I got for you.
Okay. I love this for you.
We got to start with some housekeeping. This is our first Vergecast back on the main Verge YouTube channel. I am told this was a complicated move, but it should be simple to experience. David, can you explain what's going on?
Yes. Okay. So there are now two channels on which you can experience the Vergecast. We have the Verge's main YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/The Verge, or search for The Verge. That's where all the full episodes are going to live. We just wanted to have the show and the rest of our stuff kind of be closer to each other, easier to find. And with all the stuff YouTube is doing with podcasts right now, it actually makes sense to have those things a little closer together, because now you can subscribe to just a single playlist if all you want is the podcast. You can subscribe to the channel and get everything in YouTube and get the podcast and YouTube music. It's all a little weird right now because Google is still sorting out how all of the podcast stuff works.
It's very in character for Google. I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah, so like all of this is stuff that I think we are doing correctly and just slightly ahead of Google. So hopefully this will continue to make more sense as time goes on. But basically, all the full episodes are going to be on The Verge's YouTube channel from now on. And then we're going to do like clips and extras and silly stuff where we make fun of Nilay off the show on the Vergecast channel.
Good.
So that's where all that stuff will live. I promise there was a lot of weirdness as we moved all of this stuff. Liam, our producer, did like a heroic job to get all of this done. It was messy because YouTube is messy, but I think it's done now. People seem to have like found the Vergecast again in all the YouTube platforms. So it should work. And if you don't listen to this podcast on YouTube, don't worry about it. Literally nothing else will change.
I hope this makes more sense as time goes on, should be Google's motto. I just want to be 100% clear on that.
We have a product team focused on making this make sense.
Yeah. I hope this makes sense as time goes on, is how Google approaches product strategy at a very high level. I'll give you one example. And I don't know why this Threads post did the numbers it did, except I think it spoke to people's very souls. I bought a big, silly Sony TV. I'm very happy with it.
Yeah.
It's an A95 OLED.
Ooh.
Very, very pleased with this television. It looks amazing. It came with a webcam, which I think is just representative of how deeply overcharged I was for this TV.
Yeah.
They were like, we made so much money. Here's a camera. Fine. So I'm like, what can this webcam do? Nothing. It can watch you while you watch TV and adjust the settings.
Oh.
That's a hard no.
Yeah.
And then there's a Zoom client and there's a Google Meet client. So I was like, fine. Oh, it has gesture controls, which are after the Vision Pro. I'm just not doing gesture controls.
I know what happened. Oh my God, this is the best. If this goes where I think this is about to go, this is my favorite thing.
I clip the camera to the top of the TV and I launch Google Meet to sign into our staff meeting and basically be a brat at our staff meeting. And I'm like, where do I type in the code? And you can't. And I was like, okay, where do I switch accounts to my work account? And you can't.
Oh.
And so they've made a Google Meet client for Android, which this television runs, that can't join meetings.
What
It can just call. You can just call people with your phone number from your television, a thing that everyone wants to do.
Yeah, no.
David, I'm curious for your guess on what happened here because I think I know.
So what happened was Google, in its infinite wisdom, decided that Duo and Meet should not be different things because when you call one person and you call another person, it should be the same thing. So what they did was they renamed Duo to Meet and then renamed Meet to Meet Original. And then I think I have this right. And then the old Duo Now Meet became Google Meet. But I'm guessing what never happened is that your TV never got an update. So you still have Google Duo with a different name.
Yeah, it didn't get up. There's no update available. It's not my TV didn't get an update. My TV is hardwired to the router. This is a very insane TV situation.
Well, okay, you're right. Google forgot that this TV
Google
exists.
forgot to update the Meet client so that it could join meetings.
Right. It changed the name, but forgot to change the app.
There's a Kanban board in Mountain View labeled, "We hope this makes sense over time." And update the Meet client so it can join meetings as a card on that board. And it just hasn't moved in over a year.
Nilay, I have to tell you, they scrummed this and they decided that updating Nilay's TV was not a corporate priority.
It's an Android app.
Your TV was a zero
TV
interest rate
is just
phenomenon.
a giant tablet. You don't even remember when they were like, Android tablets are back. We're going to try hard again. Remember that?
It'll make sense over time. Don't worry about it.
We hope this makes sense over time.
Don't worry about it. It'll come.
Anyway, I had to audio only join this staff meeting. I was like, I can't join from my phone down here.
I had all the power. It was great.
It was great. Truly. All right. So we're on YouTube. The upshot of that is 1, I can't join meetings from my television. And 2, we are now available on the main YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
That's right.
Pretty much.
All right, let's talk about the news. There's quite a bit of news. Let's start with the Vision Pro. It is 2 weeks after the Vision Pro hit.
Which means everybody has to return it now.
You got to make the big return decision.
Right.
Look, a lot of influencers bought the Vision Pro to make a bunch of Vision Pro views on YouTube, and now they've returned the Vision Pro.
Yes.
Because why would you keep it?
But
if that's your goal, like why would you keep it?
Yeah.
Right. Like you've milked that for all it's worth.
That's how you used to be able to do like reviews and stuff once upon a time. You just be like, yeah, I definitely want this very expensive product.
Right. I would just say there's a clout element to Vision Pro discourse that we keep pointing out. Like Vision Pro thrown at a Cybertruck. Subscribe to my newsletter. Like that is a whole.
Well, that one can't be returned.
Well, if you get enough newsletter subs,
that's true.
Signups. There's just a whole universe of that discourse that I think we can just set aside. As a family, we can agree we're going to set aside the clout chasing part of the coverage. Then there's a bunch of people who are happy with it and they're keeping it and it works for them and they're excited and they've got big lonely TVs to watch. That's great. We can talk about that because I think some of that is coming into focus as well. Mm-hmm. Then there's the people who the hype balloon for them popped and they are genuinely returning it for a variety of reasons, all of which seem fairly predictable.
Yes.
And I think that it's the gap between the hype and reality that is really disappointing a bunch of people here. So people are returning it because it's not comfortable to wear. People are returning it because it makes their eyes hurt. They're getting headaches. People are returning it because they are lonely in it or the pass-through isn't what they thought it was going to be. It feels
the
like
Windows management was one I saw.
Someone returned it over window management?
Yeah, they were like it was one of many reasons, but like a big factor for them was like, yeah, I can't like manage the Windows properly. It doesn't feel
If you are a person who had enough feelings about window management to return a $3,500 computer, please, we should hang out.
Yeah. We love you.
Just come on over. Like, we should talk. But that's how I would diagnose it, right? Is the things it was promised to do and then the things it can actually do and the product it is now. There is a pretty staggering gap between those two things.
Yes. And I think the thing we've really spent the last week kind of discovering as a society is that it turns out that Apple, having a long history of making these things work and having a presumably very cool roadmap, doesn't mean anything for the thing on your face, right? Like, this is what we talked about when we did this review, right? Like, you can talk all you want about where this is going and who's right about the future and the big ideas behind all of this and Apple's ability to execute. And I still have not changed my mind on any of that. I think if you were to bet on a horse in this race, you'd be crazy not to bet on Apple. Just historically, that is true. It doesn't change anything for the fact that you just bought a very expensive thing that is uncomfortable to wear for a lot of people, doesn't do that much for most people's use cases, and is $3,500. Like, and so I think we saw a really normal thing happen, which is a lot of people tried it. It's super cool. Like, you went through this too, Nilay. Like, the first time you put it on, you spend a couple of hours in it, you take it off, and you're like, oh my God, that is the most impressive thing I've ever seen. And then the fifth time you do that, you're like, well, I'm not doing this because it's cool. I actually need something out of this. And the entertainment side of things seems to be holding up. Like, the people who want to watch a large screen, look at cool panoramic pictures they've taken, whatever, that seems to be working for people. But the question of A, is that enough for this $3,500 headset? And B, can I do that comfortably, like literally physically comfortably?
Yeah.
Is turning out to be a higher bar, I think, than a lot of people who bought this thing expected.
I want to stay focused on that use case. I would submit to you, if you take your $3,500 and you go and buy the biggest TV you can get for that money, you will be happier in the long run than owning a first generation Vision Pro.
Yeah, because you can do TikTok at the same time.
Because you can do TikTok at the same, you can watch a show with someone else, which everyone keeps forgetting. Like, maybe you're a solitary person, and we've heard from a lot of people like this, and you never have people over to watch TV. The one time you want to, and your only option is the Vision Pro, you're going to be like, huh. There's also just being able to move around, not having the weight on your face. There's just something about that that's different.
Yeah.
The thing you'll lose out on is the audio side of it, because the Vision Pro is very convincing with spatial audio, especially if you wear good headphones with it, like AirPods Pro. That's very convincing. And as a travel device on an airplane, I've seen a lot of people wear this thing on airplanes and say, I love, like, for a long haul flight, you're flying New York to San Francisco and you do the immersion and you're just like in space and you just don't feel cramped anymore. Great. $3,500 external battery pack. Like, you're still a generation or two behind from that thing being valuable, I would say. But if that's the whole value proposition, you're really missing out on a lot that you should be getting from a computer that can put windows everywhere in your space.
Yes.
And I keep seeing apps that, like, could be really cool. There's one V-Song and I were laughing at last night. It's basically a virtual Peloton. So you have any exercise bike, preferably one with like Bluetooth that can pair to a thing over ANT or whatever protocol that is. And it just mounts a big virtual screen in front of you, and then you go on a bike ride. That's cool.
That is cool. I love that.
Super cool. And then it's like you have to wear Vision Pro in your head to do it with an external battery pack.
With the sweat.
Yeah, it's like it's not made for that.
Yeah.
Like, it just isn't made for that. And then there's the other app that everyone keeps talking about, which is the Mac display. And I thought it was utterly fascinating that a lot of the first conversation you saw from Vision Pro owners was the killer app for this thing is my Mac.
Yeah.
Which is wild. Like, just what? Like, the application model has nothing to do with spatial computing. It's just a big window into your Mac. The Mac is notably much more open than an iOS or iPadOS based device. So what you want is your Mac applications. And then you have this big screen, and Apple keeps billing it as a 4K screen. And then over time, you started seeing people say, this is actually kind of a little blurry. This isn't as sharp as I thought it was. And it's because Apple is making a 5K, like an iMac display or a studio display. That resolution, they're making a virtual one of those at that resolution. And then they're down-resing it to 4K and sending a 4K video stream of that.
Lies.
Which you can then scale infinitely to whatever weird size you want.
And so I called this out in the review, and it was just like one of those things like so hard to explain. So much of this device is once you see it for yourself, you get it. But it is really hard to explain. You're looking at the screen that seems sharp. And then underneath it are like 5 scaling operations. And then on top of that, there's foveated rendering. So you've made this huge Mac display that is already fuzzy because of the scaling steps in between the virtual display that's created, that's 5K, that's being scaled down to 4K and sent to the headset. And then you've made it really big. And then if you look at the center of it, the edges of it are blurry because of the foveated rendering. And so people are just sort of running into the reality of what that screen really looks like. And they're like, oh, my application model is still the Mac. I should just use my Mac.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the other part of that is also, to your point about it's not super clear until you see it, the actual interaction of the Mac apps on my Mac, the Vision Pro apps that are actually optimized for this spatial computing, and the iPad apps that run in the Vision Pro is not good. Like you can technically have all of those things, but the world you want, and I think the world a lot of people expected, is one where all of my apps are just all of my apps, and some of them run on my device, some of them run on my Mac, but I can just sort of put them all anywhere and they all interact, and that's pretty cool. That is not at all how it works. And I think that like the people who are mad about the window management are the ones who are like, well, either the idea of being able to leave my email in the other room is actually like not a good thing. It's neat, but it's stupid. And why would I want that? Or this thing about like, okay, I've been promised something like sort of world scale app multitasking. And this is actually a tiny little slice of that plus a bunch of other slightly confusing things. To me, this is like when they put Stage Manager on the iPad and you're like, I can see what you were going for here. You just missed it by about 30%, and it kind of kills the whole premise for me.
The two things that I think would make that much better, and you can see them, and I think that's the 30%. One, they have to make it smaller. Like the hardware is not ready for the software. Like yes. I've come back to that several times. Like one way to think about this is that this is a simulator for the hardware they want to build. And you can see putting windows all over your house and like having digital objects everywhere would be amazing. But then you have to wear a Vision Pro. And every time I see a cool Vision Pro app, I think, yes, but to have this experience, you've got to put all that weight on your head. And for some people, that's fine. I don't want to discount the people who are like, that's great. But the reality of it is then you degrade, literally degrade reality. You are wearing a Vision Pro on your face and the world around you is a lot grainier and there's motion blur and the pass-through isn't good. And you are prioritizing the digital world over the real world. And I just don't think that's an appropriate.
And the
trade-off.
moment you walk into a dark room, you just see mud, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a camera.
Yeah.
Like, you just cannot overcome cameras.
Right.
And I have now talked to, because in the review, I basically called the top on pass-through. I was like, it can get better, but it can't get 5,000% better.
Right.
And if you did, like, by the time you get that much better, some other technology will come along and be disruptive. And very smart people disagree with me on this. Fine. Like, who knows? But we all agreed that the timeline for that is 10 years out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I am just not making any predictions on what happens in 10 years of technology development.
Well, and I think a bunch of us in the office have been talking about how would you shrink this headset? Like, did they make a design mistake in it? And a lot of people are like, well, why didn't they just take that computer and put it with a battery pack, right?
Yeah.
And just take a lot of that weight out. But then if you put it with a battery pack, you'd effectively be carrying around like a Mac Mini in your pocket with a battery attached to it.
Backpack, full Apple backpack, big puffy white straps.
You'd need fans to cool it. Who knows if it can like actually be fast enough along that wire to do all the incredible processing it's doing. Yeah. It's like, no, it's actually a really I keep going back to it. It's a really fascinating device because it is so complex. It is such a like exquisitely designed device that doesn't do a whole lot.
But that part of it where it doesn't do a whole lot, that's because it's new. Like there's no apps for it.
Yeah.
We saw a report this week from Immersive Wire, I want to say it was, that most Vision Pro apps hit a ceiling of 1,000 downloads. Like very few people have this product. Right. Vanishingly few people have this product. Vanishingly few app developers have started building apps that are made for it.
But
that's a cycle that
that's a cycle that's going to continue, because if no one's making apps for it, then nobody's buying it, and if no one's buying it, then no one's making apps for it.
I do think what's clear is that this is a repeat of the you can't just blow up an iPhone app and have it work on the iPad problem, which Apple thought that ecosystem would buy it a ton of time, and that it didn't. Like, luckily, Apple was able to get the iPad ecosystem going very quickly, because you will just 2x your iPhone app and it'll be great was a total non-starter. And I think we're going through that again, where it turns out iPad apps are not the answer. Like, what we have seen overwhelmingly so far is people being like, there's some cool stuff. Even Apple now is going into Apple Arcade and saying, here's some of the stuff you can actually use for spatial. It's cool. This idea that, you have access to this giant set of apps and it will get us there and buy us enough time to get to the next thing, I'm less convinced of every day, because it just doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to be sort of satiating people that way.
So I want to talk about one more limitation that I think the community has discovered of this thing. And then I want to talk about Mark Zuckerberg reviewing it.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the best.
Which is deeply, as a professional reviewer, all I could think of is, boy, I hope more CEOs try to take my business. Like, just get out there, Sundar Pichai. Just start reviewing stuff. Be like,
Review the Pixel.
He should review the Pixel. Sundar Pichai, pick up a Pixel challenge. Pay attention to the Pixel challenge. The other limitation that I think is really weird, and Addie will have a piece on this on the site by the time you're listening to this. The people in the Vision Pro subreddit and the people that I've seen in other places online do not think Apple's default fitment is good.
Yeah.
Right. So they're like, you go in, you get your face scanned, or you do the iPhone scan and you get a light seal, and all of them are like, get a smaller light seal. Some people are like, take the light seal off and mash it against your face, which I tried. It is very convincing in terms of field of view. You get a huge field of view. I felt like I was underwater. Like, the lenses are not designed to be smashed directly against your eyeballs. But they're like, get a different light seal, make it smaller, like mess with the fit. Because they don't think that the fit that Apple is giving people is right.
Which we've discovered Apple really does not want you to do, right? Like,
they really don't want you to do that.
You can't just walk in and buy 3 light seals and see which one you like the best, right?
Because they're $200.
Well, they're $200. But so, like, I'll make that concrete for if you're listening. We have a review unit. We want more people on our team to use it. We want to make more videos, or we have ideas on how to cover it. Even if we bought another one, even if we sent the review unit from Apple back and we just bought one, in order to be fair in coverage, as more people use the thing, we have to make sure it fits them. Because if it doesn't fit right, the eye tracking goes completely wonky and people get headaches. So, okay, I told Owen, our video director, let's just go to the Apple store, just like buy a bunch of light seals. Turns out there are 17 sizes. They're $200 a piece, and Apple won't let you just buy some. Yeah. You cannot go to an Apple store and just buy some.
They keep them in a drawer behind, like, you have to ask someone, and then they'll be
so
like, no.
Owen, who made the Vision Pro video with, like, Owen was on that team. He edited that video. They made him sit for the demo, the full half-hour demo, and then they let him buy one in his size. And it's like, why? Like, we want to give you money.
Yeah.
Up to $4,000. Like, if you walk into any store and you're like, here's $4,000, just give me one of everything. Few stores in America will be like, no, you just, actually, there's a process here.
Yeah. Hermes would be like, get out. Yeah. You get one.
Yeah. And when you think of the Vision Pro light seal, you immediately leap to Hermes.
100%. Same experience. Same, like, I walk in, I'm like, ooh, do I have enough money to be in here right now?
Yeah. It's Barney's, Hermes, and the Vision Pro light seal in terms of luxury purchasing experiences. You can't just buy a Ferrari. You got to buy a bad Ferrari first.
Yeah.
You can't just buy a Vision Pro light seal. You got to sit down for 30 minutes first. So that is annoying on its face if you buy it for enterprise use. I've seen a lot of designers, like, we bought one for our office so we could, like, share it as a 3D modeling tool. And they're like, this is just, like, not designed to be shared. If you spend $3,500 to have it as a cool TV, it is challenging to get it to fit the other people. That's just physically.
Yeah.
You can accomplish the goal, but it is challenging to be like, this computer is available for someone in this office to use. Here's a selection of things that make it fit your head.
It's so consumer hostile.
I think there's a connection here.
Yeah.
It's too new.
Yeah.
I think they just shipped the thing There's like, you all know how I feel about headphone jacks. Like,
Yeah.
that was a hostile move. This is like the product isn't ready to support that thing. And the way that it's in particular not ready is iOS and iPadOS have no affordance for multi-user support.
Yeah.
So the Vision Pro, it has Optic ID in it. It can scan your eyes and log you in. It should be able to scan my eyes or your eyes or David's eyes or someone else's eyes and be like, here's your account. You're you. We know you're you. Here's your account and here's your stuff. And it has nothing. And like on top of it, it has none of the like recalibrations stored. So if I have a Vision Pro and I lend it to you,
Thanks.
every time I lend it to you, you have to recalibrate. I have to put it in guest mode and you have to recalibrate it for your eyes.
Yeah, that's stupid.
That was a deliberate choice though, right? That has to have been a deliberate choice by Apple to make it hard for you to share this thing with people because
why?
For all the reasons you've been talking about, that the hardware is not set up for success for you to be sharing this
But
thing.
why? That's why I think it's a hostile because
it's not finished.
But they cannot possibly. It's hostile when like.
I don't think it's like
I think
Apple is hostile.
Okay, so let me explain why I think the headphone jack is hostile. Let me rewind this conversation. They took out the headphone jack. They didn't need to, especially as the phones started getting bigger. They did that because they wanted AirPods to succeed. AirPods are a huge success. I know people love their AirPods. I know people think we were wrong about AirPods. They basically created a market for proprietary headphones.
Yes.
AirPods are proprietary headphones.
Yes.
Like I know they run on Bluetooth, but they actually run a special version of Bluetooth.
Gen Z gets you on that one. They're all like, can you believe they got rid of the headphone jack? Who allowed that? And I'm like, we wrote about it all the time.
I did my best, but like that was straight hostile. Like they created a market for proprietary headphones and they flooded the market with their own headphones. And yes, I'm aware that people really like them. Whatever, it's a thing that happened. Not allowing multiple users on the iPad at this point in the iPad's history, a little bit hostile. Like, you have families, people share their iPads. Schools. There's some enterprise support for shared accounts on iOS devices if you're in a school or a business. But a regular person who spends $500, $600, $700 on an iPad that is not a family device by any stretch of the imagination is locked to one user because Apple wants you to buy multiple iPads. They want everyone in your family to have an iPad. Okay, there's some just raw capitalistic user hostility there.
Yeah.
Fine, they're the richest company in the world. What a shock. I think with the Vision Pro, there's no expectation that a family of 4 is going to buy 4 Vision Pros.
No, I agree.
I think that's why I'm like not ready to call it. I think they just shipped the product that was done.
I think it was hostile design. I don't think it's necessarily like Apple was set out to had a big vision here. I think it was just, well, we want to make this thing as cool as possible. And that means we need to make it as finicky as possible, regardless of what that means for like use cases for other people, because we want to make it as cool as possible. And that's hostile to the users because then they can't share it. They can't do anything with it. They do have to go buy another one, or they have to go buy a $200 light seal if they want to have that experience. And like, I don't want to say the Quest Pro was a good product, but that part of it.
Just to remind everyone, we gave the Quest Pro a 4.
Yeah.
And the headline was "Get me out of here."
Mm-hmm.
But could you put it on, like, when you put it on your head, did it fit? Did you have to go buy a $200 light seal to make sure it worked?
Oh, no. So I don't buy that premise at all, honestly. Like, have you ever put on somebody else's headset and you spend 15 minutes screwing around with the lenses and the strap to get it to fit your head? Like, there's just no world in which you have a good experience using these things. Ironically, it's one of the reasons I think Meta Ray-Ban strategy is closer to the right one, because that's just a pair of glasses that is much closer to a thing you can just put on anyone's head and it will more or less work. Yeah. You might look stupid in them, but it's just a pair of glasses. Whereas something like this is just by definition so individual user-centric that I think for Apple to say, oh, share it with your friends, they're going to have a trash experience in it, is actually a bad idea. Like, I think if
I think it was a bad idea. What I'm saying is go further back. I think it was a bad idea to design a product.
Well, you're just arguing it was a bad idea to ship the Vision Pro, which is fine.
Yeah,
that's
to
just
ship
that
it in
that
the
ship
state to say, hey, we're going to charge you $200 for a light seal. Hey, we're going to make it so extraordinary for one person and no one else. I think that's just inherently hostile to design.
I will say, I do think an interesting question that is becoming more and more open is whether Apple overshot. And this is why we should get into Mark Zuckerberg's review of this thing, because it's part of the case that he made, which is that Apple basically came out and said, we are going to make the best most impressive, most incredible thing possible. Every other consequence be damned, right? And it did that by all accounts. Like I don't think it missed in terms of doing the best anyone possibly can at this moment in time on very many fronts. Is doing that a better idea than making something that is 85% as good and maybe half the weight? Don't know. Is it something that Apple should have shipped that was much closer to just a screen and an entertainment device, as opposed to trying to do all of this other stuff? I think this roadmap Apple has set itself on, where it made the best thing possible and it's just going to try to bring it down in all of those ways over time towards people, is a strategy. But I think it's less and less obvious to me that it's the right one, because it's like you want that to be the luxury thing that not everybody can afford, but everybody who can really loves. And even that is not what it's getting right now. It's not like the Tesla Roadster or the super expensive first luxury item you see from a lot of companies. It's not even working for those people.
It's not the Samsung flip phones, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the thing. It was like, okay, there's a lot of flaws in this. If you peel this part off, it will destroy it, and then Samsung will not be happy.
Yeah.
But like, it still worked pretty well, and more than one person could use it. But it actually it delivered on the promise. And this feels like it doesn't.
But the
always.
promise there was just it unfolds.
Yeah, it was a much simpler
right. The promise that Apple is making is we will intermediate reality for you.
And that was perhaps too big a promise to make.
I think David said this a couple weeks ago, which is with the Apple Watch, and so many people have compared the Vision Pro to the Apple Watch, which I'm just going to remind everyone I got right in that review too. But the Apple Watch underwent drastic changes. But David, I think it was you who said this a couple weeks ago. They got the form factor right. Everyone knew that this is how it should look. And all you're doing is refining the thing around the shape that it should be. And here, it just seems obvious that the form factor isn't right. Right? That they shouldn't do pass through in this way. That what you want is you want glasses. So I think it does bring it to the Zuckerberg review, which again, I think every CEO should just review their competitors' products like head on.
100%.
David, do you want to tell us what's going on with Mark?
Sure. Okay, so let me just briefly set the scene for you here. So Mark Zuckerberg and his newly long hair, which I'm shocked we have not talked about in this show yet, but we'll just leave that. Sitting on a couch in a dark long sleeve shirt, I think, with an immaculately fluffed pillow behind him, lovely setup. Did maybe 5 minutes or so, just kind of riff on his experience with the Vision Pro, how he feels about the Quest 3 compared to the Vision Pro. Because there were a lot of people, remember when this came out, who were like, oh, the Quest is dead. Meta actually rushed to launch the Quest 3 ahead of the Vision Pro. These two things have been very closely pitted against each other as sort of opposite ends of this strategy for a very long time. And he sat down and basically, we should just play a clip here, but he basically said at the end of his experience, he thinks not only is the Quest 3 a better value, he thinks it is straight up a better product than the Vision Pro.
Yeah. Pull over in your car and just look at this man's hair and then listen to his voice.
I think the Quest is the better product, period. And, the different companies made different design decisions for the headsets. They have different strengths. But overall, Quest is better for the vast majority of things that people use mixed reality for.
All right, so that's Mark, and that's a good line, right?
Beautiful hair, too.
It's great hair. It is like lustrous. That's what punching other men in the face will get you.
Just gets the follicles going.
Yeah, he's just rocking. Healthier than ever. By the way, do you know mixed martial arts is listed in Meta's risk factors with investors?
Yes. So good.
Our CEO made deeply injure himself fighting other humans. Very good. Anyway, so the point there, right, is everyone thought, okay, does $500 get me 85% of a Vision Pro? And honestly, in the review, we didn't talk about the Quest a lot in our review because they feel very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think now what Zuckerberg is trying to do is actually make them more competitors. So
I don't even know if I agree with that. I think
you don't.
Part of his take, I think, is that they're actually very different things, that everybody wants them to be trying to do the same thing and sort of compete on what they can do for different people. And it's like, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Should I buy a Quest or a Vision Pro? And his whole point is kind of, you can't do any of that stuff on the Vision Pro. Like the Quest, and I will say the single funniest thing about this whole video to me was the moment where the camera flips around and it becomes clear that he's filming this thing on a Quest 3, which just means there is a person sitting there very still, just staring at him with a headset on.
Just like you do with the Vision Pro at your child's birthday party.
Yeah, exactly. Like next time we make a video, Nilay, I'm just going to stare into your eyes the whole time. It's going to be incredible. But it's a big part of what he talks about, and I think is the most compelling part of Zuckerberg's case here, is that for all the stuff people actually want to do in a headset like this right now, we can talk about 10 years from now, we can talk about the big far future of headsets for everybody. But in terms of like right now, what people want to do inside of a headset, there's just more of that in the Quest.
Yeah. There's more games, there's more apps. You can do 3 Mac windows if you want to. Although setting that up is a Byzantine nightmare of like what I call software dongles.
Oh yeah.
It's not great.
You have to download a bunch of apps that just sound like malware in order to, like, it's bad.
Yeah. And you're like, I'm sending my entire screen to Meta? No, thank you, sir. I don't care what your hair looks like today. No. So you're not actually sending your entire screen to Meta. But you understand what I'm saying. It's a nightmare of weird applications. And Mark actually calls it out. Like Apple's ecosystem is great. But if you want to play a bunch of games or you want to do fitness, if you want to control the thing, you have high resolution controllers, which he calls out very specifically. And the heart of what he's getting at, and I think this is really interesting because you rarely see CEOs acknowledge this. He's like, we made different trade-offs than Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we think our trade-offs make a better product, period, not just a cheaper product, not just a better product at our price point. And he comes back to that over and over again. And if you go listen to any CEO ever talk about their products, I talk to a lot of CEOs, and a lot of decoders like, you made this trade-off. How did you make that choice? And they're like, we didn't make any trade-offs at all. Right. All the time.
Yeah.
Like all the time. Especially Apple refuses to acknowledge that they made trade-offs.
Right.
Like in the review process, we're like, why is the battery over here? And they're like, yeah, we want to save weight on your head. And that is as much of a trade-off as
because it is meant to be over here.
It's like,
Jesus wanted it that way.
And it's like, there's that one you can't avoid. But everything else, they're like, these are the best displays ever made.
Yeah.
And then Mark is there being like, we've looked at these displays and they are OLED displays and they have exactly the kind of motion blur that you would expect from OLED displays. Our lenses are better. The Meta really believes the Quest 3's pancake lenses are better. They have a wider field of view. So we lose X from the displays, the resolution that Apple has in their displays, but we gain X in the lenses. I'm not saying these are the right trade-offs. I'm not saying these are trade-offs that make you buy anything. I'm saying a CEO acknowledging the trade-offs in a product category is wild, like fully wild. And I don't know if you saw this, Alex. A lot of people were like, this is Zuck's Ballmer moment.
Oh,
where Ballmer was like, $500 fully unsubsidized with a plan. I like our phone better. And there's an element of that to what Zuck was doing.
Oh, no, I disagree. I thought it felt more like a victory lap, like a legit victory lap.
Wow. Okay. That's how you took it.
Yeah. Because V put up a story this week that I worked with her on about the visions of these two companies, because the end game for both of them isn't VR, it's AR, right? Like both of these companies are waiting. Eventually the technology is going to get there and they're going to do face computers. And that's what everybody wants. Spatial computing.
After 15 days of the Vision Pro.
Okay, excuse me.
Can we say everyone wants a face
That's
computer?
what everyone in Silicon Valley wants. That's what all the VCs want.
Yeah.
But I think like their strategy is a much smarter strategy. And I think when you think about how you have to normalize these products because they are really big, really wild, and really insane, you have to normalize that. Like it's going to require a cultural shift. And Meta is moving with much smarter purpose in that direction than Apple, who is like, face computer that looks like ski goggles. Put it on your face. It's way too heavy and you might throw up. It'll be fine. And Meta's like, okay, well, we've got like these glasses that just look like glasses and you can't do as much, but you can still scan photos and stuff like that, which is really, really cool. And they've got the VR headsets that actually like do VR well.
Yeah.
Which like I think that's just a better strategy. I think he's right. And when I was watching it, I was like, oh, this is him just taking this victory lap. And also making some egregious claims like Meta is going to be the open ecosystem.
Yeah, which is bananas.
Yeah, are they going to let Lenovo build Quests?
I was like, oh, are you just announcing that everybody's going to be making headsets for Meta OS?
What they mean, from what I understand, is that you can sideload applications on a Quest.
Okay.
No, what Meta means is if you build something cool, we'll just buy your company, and that's an open model. That
it's an
counts.
open ecosystem because you get rich.
Yeah, they mean in every phase of computing, there's Apple being weird.
Yeah.
And then there's everyone else being like, what if we work together? And then there's Apple being weird.
Yeah, that part I was like, oh, well, I feel like you had me this whole time. Your hair looks great. You're saying the things that I really do think about this whole field, and now you've just lied.
He does keep saying that they will be the open player in VR, and it's really unclear.
I was like, I really want to sit him down with like a computer historian to explain to him computer history so that he understands that what he is saying is not true.
Oh, I'm sure he has access to computer historians.
He probably does. But he doesn't listen. He should listen.
I think there's just a way of positioning yourself up against the big bad of Apple that he's taking advantage of. But I think right now what they have is side-loading apps.
Yeah.
But I will say also, to your point, Alex, I think one thing I'm really starting to realize is how significant Meta's lead is, just having been at this in public for a decade.
Yep.
Because again, like Nilay, I go back to the Apple Watch, you launch the thing and then you wait around for a couple of years for people to tell you what they want from it. And then it's your job to kind of chase that and figure it out, right? And Apple is good at that generally and does it very quickly and relies on its developers to do it for them. Meta's been at that for 10 years now. Like the thing where here's a thing on your face, it's kind of ugly and you'll probably throw up. Like, you know what that sounds like is the first 3 Oculus products. That's just what it was. And it turned off a lot of people. And we all, hemmed and hawed about whether a whole generation was being turned off by their first experience in VR because it was so bad. But now it's been at this long enough that it's pretty good at it. And it has a pretty clear sense of what people want right now. And I think that's where things like the Meta Ray-Ban stuff come from. It's like, oh, people want super immersive, and that's either like gaming or the fitness stuff. They want to be in another world, or they want as little technology as possible. And so they've pushed to both ends of that, and I think are able to do it. Whereas Apple very much just put out a tech demo, and we're like, is this anything? Like it's starting at that road now, and Meta has been on it for a long time.
I would say that I think there's a little bit of a danger of the Balmer problem in that Apple is relentless.
Yes.
And they do stay focused. The difference
and they have all the money in the universe.
Is that Mark Zuckerberg is not Steve Ballmer.
Yes.
It's just an observation that I've made over time. I've studied these two men very carefully. I think Meta is more reactive to consumers, and that Ballmer's Microsoft was much more reactive to enterprise.
Yeah. That's 100%.
And that version of Microsoft, not Microsoft now, but that version of Microsoft in particular was addicted to making the ugliest shit possible.
Yes.
They were just like, it's Windows Mobile 6.5. It's the same Windows Mobile that you've hated all this time, but now the stock launcher is a honeycomb. Also, that won't be there, and carriers can do whatever garbage they want. And it's like, this isn't a good idea.
We made the icons smaller.
This is bad.
Yeah.
And Apple was able to and so I think there are some meaningful differences here because they have been in market with a complete consumer product. I'm not saying I have a Quest 2. You have lots of Quest 2s out there, some Quest 3s. Apple's coming at this from a different direction. I'm not saying they won't succeed, but I think after 2 weeks with this thing, like the barriers are just crystal clear.
Yeah.
In a way that the barriers to the Quest are also crystal clear, and they're going to converge more than they don't. But saying like Apple revitalized this market, I think is
generous.
Yeah, and with the watch, they had a huge advantage, which was no one else could make a watch.
Well,
no, I mean like literally, like the iPhone does not allow other watches.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Like Pebble existed. And
I was like, Pebble was a great.
No, but
watch.
if you want to do the thing where like, you get a text message and you just respond yes, like Pebble was not allowed to do that.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, okay, let me pull my phone out.
So we'll see. Is there anything else you want to say?
We've talked enough about the Vision Pro. I like that we just spent 40 minutes being like, everybody's returning this product. Let's talk about it.
Oh, it is the most fascinating product. It is Apple's first big bet. I want to talk about it. I just want to end on this. Mm-hmm. I want everyone to do this homework and send me your evaluation. We've talked a lot about my theory of wearable bullshit. Whatever that is, where the chart is value on one axis and then like fiddliness.
Yeah.
And then a 10x multiplier if it's on your face. That's as far as I've gotten on this. So an Apple Watch started really fiddly with not a lot of value, eventually crossed the line. And now people really like Apple Watches.
We all have one.
Yeah. AirPods, not very fiddly at all. Super valuable. People really like them. Face computers, historically below the line. Very fiddly, enormous social cost, not a lot of value.
Yeah.
Where do you think the Vision Pro is on the graph? Send me your graph. We'll just go through them. I'm dying to know what you all think after this. Because that's fiddliness. No, it's value on the values on the y-axis, fiddliness on the x, and then a 10x multiplier for on your face. That's it. That's what I think it is. There's an entire episode where we go through this. So you go back and look at that one if you want more versions of the graph. But just send me your graphs. I'm dying to know what you think about the theory of wearable bullshit as applied to Vision Pro. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back. We're back. As we've been recording, vamping to fill time with the Vision Pro, Microsoft has been quietly making announcements in the background on a podcast, I believe.
Yes.
The weirdest way ever to announce things.
We've been recording a podcast while they have been publishing a podcast, and now our podcast will be about what they said on their podcast.
Do we now directly compete with the Xbox?
Yes. Download ours. Don't download the Xbox.
Phil Spencer just went on a podcast and said everything The Verge said is true and always has been. All right, Alex, what is going on in the news over there?
Okay, so there's been rumors for the last few weeks that Microsoft was going to take a couple of games and that are exclusive for the Xbox and make them not exclusive. Put them on the Switch, put them on the PS5. Fans were not pleased about that.
Can you explain that to me? Actually, I have realized in all of this chaos that I don't understand why people would be so up in arms about that.
Well, I think if you go and you spend a lot of money on a product and you invest a lot of time and energy into it and like buying a lot of games for it, and you're like, yeah, I don't get like The Last of Us and I don't get Horizon Zero Dawn and I don't get all these cool PS5 games, but I get, Starfield and I get Sea of Thieves. And then they say, okay, now Starfield is going to go off and be on PS5. I'd probably be a little miffed.
So you're like, maybe I should have just bought a PlayStation and now I get all the games.
Right. Like, why did I even buy an Xbox to begin with?
I get that.
Because they're like $500-$600. That's expensive. So Starfield is not coming to the PS5, but Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, and Pentiment are coming to the PS5 and the Switch. First Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment, then Sea of Thieves and Grounded. Sea of Thieves is like a really pretty popular Xbox game where you can like be a pirate and you go play with other pirates. It's cute. It's fun. It's a big, like, it's almost an MMORPG, but not quite. These are pretty popular games for Xbox, and now they're going to be on PS5 and Nintendo Switch. And
Can I just say something about this? Microsoft has not actually officially confirmed those 4 games.
What?
Tom has reported and knows that it's those 4 games.
Yeah.
But Microsoft won't confirm that those are
They're
the
just
4.
saying
So
4
weird.
games, but they are not. They've pretty clearly said it's not going to be Starfield, and it's not going to be the rumored Indiana Jones video game that's coming out.
So it's not any of the big games. I mean, like, realistic, like,
yeah,
Microsoft has a handful of like gigantic things in its arsenal now, and none of the games you just named are those games.
Like, Xbox fans, please don't come for me. But if you're not like a big hardcore Xbox fans, these are probably not the biggest games in the world. It's nothing compared to like The Last of Us or Uncharted or some of PlayStation's exclusives.
I'm horrible at video games, and all of these sound like fun names for thieves in a comic book.
Yeah.
I'm Pentiment. I'm Sea of Thieves. Like
Rejected Musketeers.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh no, it's Hi-Fi Rush. Like,
but this has been a big deal for the community. Tom actually got to talk with Phil Spencer about it. There was a big interview, and I have definitely been maybe editing that little interview, looking at that stuff. I maybe knew a little ahead of the podcast what was coming or not coming. Spoilers. And I thought what was really interesting was he was very evasive in the interview with us about like what games were coming and what games weren't coming. He wasn't really commit to anything. And when asked specifically about Starfield and Indiana Jones, which are the ones I think fans are most concerned about losing that that access to, or losing that exclusive access to. He said, I don't think we should, as an industry, ever rule out a game going to any other platform, which is, if you just want to be able to play any game, like you, Nilay, who is bad at games and probably doesn't want to own every system, that's great news for you. If you're really invested in one ecosystem, that's less great news, because like the console wars.
Yeah. So a really interesting thing here that I am hoping you can explain to me. I have for years now assumed that the Microsoft strategy is game streaming.
Yes.
Right. They're slowly moving to Xbox game streaming. They bought Activision. Mm-hmm. They want to be everywhere. And Phil Spencer has said to me, like, we are bad. We're the number 3 player in video games. And the future in consoles. And if you look broadly, all the action is on phones, and we got to go there.
Yeah.
And that has always felt like a hint of we're going to go do game streaming. Now there's the Digital Markets Act. Apple has to open up different stores. Apple has said they're going to allow game streaming. So you look at this shift, and it is not that. They're not putting Xbox Game Pass on the PS5.
Right.
They're just porting 4 titles to the PS5.
Yeah. And people were that upset about it.
But that's the part that I don't get. It's like, why? That's a lot of work. Like, isn't the point that we're going to stream the titles over there? It's
not like, given the architecture of these consoles now, it's not as hard a work as it used to be, because they both run on the same like AMD kind of architecture. It's different enough that it's like, it's not like just point and click and you immediately transfer, but it's not as hard as it used to be. I think this is all kind of part of showing that they're friendly and that they're not going to create a monopoly in gaming, because right now they own Activision Blizzard, which was like one of the largest game companies. They are effectively one of the largest game companies in the world right now, right? Like I think Tencent and maybe Nintendo are the only thing that might even come close to them. So just absolutely enormous. And if they want to say, okay, no more Call of Duty on PS5, in 10 years they can do that. So this...
No, but they ran around the world promising any government official that they would ship Call of Duty for at least 5 more years, right? Like
10.
10.
Yeah. So they're like committed for the next 10 years.
I mean, there are like feudal lords in European countries that you've never heard of that have secured a 10-year commitment for Call of Duty.
And they're trying, and like a feudal lord, they're trying to show how magnanimous they are, right? They're trying to show, we got you. We want to be everywhere all at once, but we also don't want to destroy all of our competition because we need them to sell games.
Oh man, that is so charitable and so wrong.
Yeah.
Oh man.
What's your read on it?
So we should. You're probably right, honestly. But
I don't know.
We should cut off here because I think we're gonna have Tom on the show on Tuesday, who knows clearly more about what's going on than anyone at Microsoft. So Tom's going to explain what's going on here. But Nilay, I would just point you to the Xbox One. And the thing where Microsoft said, hey, here's a console that plays all of your games, but we're doing it in a slightly new way. And also a different thing happens when you turn on your TV. And gamers just about burned the buildings down at Microsoft. Like, this business is too big to screw up. And if you're Microsoft and you're out here saying game streaming is the future, we're moving these 3 games you've never heard of and Sea of Thieves over, and people lose their minds, like... Microsoft is going to play this the slowest possible way because it is desperately afraid of losing this little bit of love that it has in the gaming community. Like, I do actually agree with Alex that there are some reasons to be worried about the antitrust ramifications of just running roughshod over the gaming industry, which in theory Microsoft could afford to do. But also, pissing off gamers goes real bad for everybody, and Microsoft knows that better than anybody. And so it is going to take this the slowest it feels like it can afford to take.
Which is why there's a lot of rumors. We wrote a piece this week. Like, Tom really thinks a handheld is coming. He'll talk more about it with David on next week. Sean also fully wants... he wants to manifest a handheld that's like a Steam Deck with Xbox built in. Like, I am rooting for Sean because I think that will be cool too. But they did tease some like unique hardware coming. They've teased that some bigger hardware is coming down the line.
Phil Spencer keeps liking tweets about.
Yeah, he keeps liking tweets about handhelds. And they keep, in this conversation he had with Tom, he said, yes, some unique stuff's coming. So like
a handheld is coming. Like,
a handheld is coming. Is it going to be like a good handheld, or is it going to be more like what Sony like farted out? We'll see.
All right.
Yeah. Sorry.
We'll come back. Tom will be on the show. We'll unpack all of it.
Yeah.
I'm legitimately confused about why port 4 games to another console
I'm gonna
if your strategy is to be everywhere and the problem is phones.
We're gonna throw you into the Xbox like Reddit and just. I think the confusion will go away.
Can I interest you in gamers?
Oh no, it's Hi-Fi Rush. Okay.
They were mainly I think they were more concerned about Starfield, which it sounds like is not going to be in this initial run. So to be fair, that was the one they were really passionate about because it just came out. They're like, don't do this like this.
But I would bet you $10 that if Microsoft had its druthers and was not afraid of the ramifications, Starfield would be in this.
Oh, 100%.
Like Microsoft's strategy includes Starfield and Indiana Jones being available everywhere. It just does.
It's coming. It's just they're going to be like 6 months from now. They'll be like, oh, it came out. Don't worry about it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Phil Spencer is just like quietly tiptoeing in slippers towards the future that he is promising. Like that's where we're at here.
High up on the tippies.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
High heels on the tippies.
Yep, I know.
There we go. I said it all the way to work today. That's how I walked.
The next line that's the real problem.
I'm not going to finish
just move on.
We're good. We're good here. I love TikTok.
All right, that's Microsoft, and again, Tom will be on the show, and we'll try to figure out what all this means. We should talk about AI briefly before our lightning round. By the way, 2 more people have asked me how to sponsor lightning round, and the answer is that for all my jokes about taking your money, that's not my job. I don't know how. That's not what we do here.
Just Venmo him.
The influencers know how to take money. But we just do disclosures and other people take the money. So we'll figure it out. I promise someone else is going to take your money. But we should talk about AI quickly and then do a lightning round. We mentioned at the top of the show that Google's strategy is very much, we hope over time this makes sense. I would say that my understanding of the Gemini product roadmap right now fits perfectly into over time we hope this makes sense, because they announced Gemini Ultra, which is $20 a month. Mm-hmm. And then, David, you just wrote about Gemini 1.5 Pro, which they're like is as good as Gemini Ultra.
It's fantastic.
What is going on here?
So Google, in case you've wondered if Google is good at naming things now because they decided to name everything Gemini and that seemed like it made sense, don't worry, my friends. Google still sucks at naming stuff. There are, I think, 4 different product names between the Gemini product that you use and the Gemini subscription that you pay for. There are 4 different product names. But at any rate, so Gemini 1.5 is basically Google's new next model. It makes sense. Everybody's always working on these next models. I was talking to Sundar Pichai, their CEO, about this yesterday, and one of the things that he told me was he thinks that over time, eventually, these numbers won't matter to people, and all of this stuff will just sort of happen in the background. He compared it to Google search, where like search doesn't get new version names. It just kind of gets better over time.
I want to point out that Sam Altman said that a million times before announcing GPT-4. Just saying.
Oh, sure. And there's 3.5 and there's 3.5 Turbo and there's GPT-4 and now GPT-5 is apparently a thing, even though he said it wouldn't matter. Like all of this is insane. But we're going to get to that point eventually. But right now we're very much in this arms race. And I think especially the way you have to understand the arms race is these 2 companies in particular, OpenAI and Google, are in a massive land grab for developer resources, right? Like if every company on earth is at some point going to have an AI strategy, and at this moment that's what it looks like, there are basically 2 players right now they can give a whole lot of money to. And there is a lot of money in winning that. Like think about what AWS did for Amazon, right? Because it was early to, we're very good at giving you developer resources in the cloud. There is now a belief that the market for AI is going to be even bigger and happen even faster. So these companies are just running as fast as they possibly can. And they honestly don't care all that much if the version numbers don't make any sense to us as users. But so Gemini 1.5 is coming out, and at some point it will just sort of wholly replace Gemini 1.0. And there's the 3 sizes of it. There's Ultra, which is like the big full model, all the epic stuff. The Pro, which is the middle one, which is the one that most consumers see. And then there's Nano, which is specifically designed to run on people's devices. Google hasn't talked much about Nano yet on any of its Gemini stuff, but that's an, I think, interesting piece of it. The big thing with Gemini 1.5 is that its context window is much bigger. And essentially what that means is you can just put a lot more stuff into it at a time. When you... there's a bunch of like weird, complicated math to do, but typically they say it's like 3/4 of a word is a token, and Google's context window for Gemini 1.5 is 1 million tokens, which is a lot of words. You can do hours of video, hours of audio, all kinds of different stuff. So you can just plug all this in and then ask questions about it, do stuff with it. And they have big ideas about what people might do with this huge context window. And there's a lot coming.
So we could put like the entire B movie in there and then find out like if we were supposed to really think there was a romance between a human woman and a bee.
That is a great question to ask a computer.
Yeah.
Actually.
It's like,
do you detect love?
I really want to
Let me up the difficult for you.
If you do this, please email me.
There's a great exchange in David's report on this where I think Sundar says you could fit the entire Lord of the Rings movie into the context window. And David's like, that means that's happened at Google.
He said it so without thinking that he was just like, it was as if he had like left the Lord of the Rings meeting right before talking to me. And I was just like, this definitely happened, right?
It's very good. What's fascinating to me about all of this is, yes, there's an arms race for developers. There are still, I think we're hitting the same place with AI on a slightly longer time frame as people are hitting with the Vision Pro on a slightly shorter time frame, which is like, it's really cool, fastest consumer adoption history, and now we've all just run into the limits.
That's right.
Yes.
Right, and I think developers love it because they can build new apps, they can certainly go get funding from VCs. You can write code with it, which I think people really love to do. And sort of everywhere else, it's like what I can do is produce spam at a higher rate than spam has ever been produced before and turn the internet into a fetid swamp.
Oh, the corporate folks love it.
Yeah.
Because they're like, yeah, I can just have it do all my emails. When I have to do a memo, I just have it write the first draft of my memo for me. And you're like, well, you shouldn't do that. Don't you? You should write. That's important.
Oh, I think sending corporate emails with AI is, I don't actually send a lot of emails. I refuse to use enterprise software.
Well, not that part.
Thing about me. But like the idea that some transactional email is better written by AI than fine. But like that is a pretty small use case on the grand order of things.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, David, as you looked at this model, as you played with Ultra, as you've played with the other ones, do you see that next set of big uses showing up?
No. I think there's going to be an increasing kind of creative state of the art. Like one of the other things that happened this week was OpenAI launched Sora, which is its text to video model. And so I think the kind of state of the art of stuff you can make creatively, there's a just massive room left to go. And there's going to be all kinds of cool stuff on that front. But I think we've been talking about on the show for a while now, when is the sort of novelty of using these AI chatbots going to wear off? And we're there. I think it's happening. And one of the other things I'm starting to see all over social is a lot of people who started paying for Copilot from Microsoft and are now canceling it. And people are starting to sign up for Gemini Advanced with $20 a month. People are starting to goof around with it. And you look at it and it's like the thing so many people keep saying about the Vision Pro is like amazing technology. I took it off and kind of never had a reason to put it on again. And I think a lot of people are starting to feel that way, especially in the sort of one-to-one consumer use case about AI stuff. And also, I think that's why all these companies are going after companies, because if I'm already signed up for this stuff through my organization, like, yeah, I'll use it to make it easier to make charts or whatever.
I mean, that was Microsoft's whole strategy, right? Like get Copilot out.
Yeah, but Copilot is $20 a month to make charts easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're like a IT guy with endless budget at a big company.
The days of endless IT budgets are over.
Who knows?
Right. You can see all these companies are contracting. They're like not spending lots of money. Like that to me is like, this is the big gap. I will say that I recently set the action button on my iPhone 15 Pro to open the ChatGPT voice assistant, just the cheap one, 3.5, not 4, not the one you have to pay for. And it is like, oh, they should just make Siri this.
Yep.
Like they should throw Siri
100%.
away and they should just make Siri this. It is revelatory when you're like, the other day we had to reheat chicken wings from the Super Bowl and I just asked my phone and it said an answer to me. Was that answer correct? Did it lie? Did it hallucinate the temperature and the time? It was fine because the stakes were so low.
Yeah.
I asked it twice.
Chicken wings is high stakes, though.
No, but they're not reheating.
Well, then,
It's true.
yeah.
I was like,
Reheating, that's fair.
does it, because I asked it twice, and the first time it said 350 degrees, and the second time it said 375, and I was like, this doesn't matter. The stakes are very low here, and I didn't have to trawl the SEO'd internet.
Yeah.
And Siri, I asked Siri, and
What if
Siri was
it's
like, I don't know. Like, just
If it had said
useless.
200, would you have been like in there being like, this feels wrong, but I'll go with it?
That's how I would describe the ChatGPT use case. You know, that old Stephen Colbert word truthiness.
Yeah.
Like, if you're comfortable with something that just feels right, I really encourage you to set ChatGPT to your action button.
So, but actually, that's a really good example of the problem that all these companies are having, right? Like Google is essentially ripping and replacing Google Assistant with Gemini for the same reason. Like this stuff is going to be better at those things. Would you pay $20 a month for the thing that you just described? Like, no,
Absolutely
nobody would. And so there's going to be this like mainstream use case for this stuff that no one will pay for. And then there's going to be a ton of money, at least that's what these companies are betting, in the business use cases. But to me, it feels like we are quickly hitting something like a ceiling of what people actually want to do with these things day in and day out. Like a 1 million token context window does not make you better at chicken wings. It just doesn't. And so I think that next thing for regular people is going to have to come from somewhere else. And there's a bunch of different ways these companies are trying to do it. OpenAI has been making a bunch of tweaks to like how it builds its models to try and make them sort of smarter and more efficient. It also launched a thing this week called Memory, where it can actually remember things about you and what you like and your preferences so that it should sort of interact with you in a more human and like friendly way over time. That's the stuff that I think is going to be interesting. Just building bigger models to do more high-end stuff is like purely a business play. And I think you're right that $20 per person per month is more money than most companies have to spend at this moment in time. Yeah. So I don't know which of those things is going to catch up first.
Can you imagine spending $20 a month for like possibly right, possibly wrong chicken wings reheating instructions?
I mean, I think if you just buy chicken wings at restaurants, it's always a gamble. Are they going to be good?
Yeah.
If your chicken wings budget is $20 a month, it's a gamble every time.
Yeah, that's fair.
Chicken wings are a big deal.
They are. Very important.
I want to talk about the other side of the AI debate real quick. David, you wrote about robots.txt this week.
I did.
Sarah Zhang and I talked about the copyright battles that are facing all these AI companies on Decoder. There's something else here, right? These companies are forging ahead with ever bigger models, ever more use cases, higher prices, and the sort of underlying question of, is it okay to take all this stuff to make the models, remains extraordinarily unresolved. The Sarah Silverman case, a group of authors, including Sarah Silverman, suing OpenAI, they just had a setback in their case. All of the claims except direct copyright infringement, which is a big deal, but all the other claims are thrown out. The judge seemed very skeptical. There's some like specific concerns in there that are pretty wonky, so we don't have to go into them. But that case is getting whittled down. I think the Times case against OpenAI is a little bit stronger, so we'll see. But we don't know if these companies can even do it, like whether this is copyright infringement such that the courts just shut down the entire notion of this to begin with, or if the payments that they're required to make become so high that the business models don't work out. All open questions. Right. And then, David, I want you to talk about robots.txt because there's this little handshake agreement of a text file on every website. And that handshake agreement is like one hand is just crushing the other one. And it's like this thing can't support the weight of it, I don't think.
Yeah, so I got sort of obsessed with this years ago when I first started talking to people about Google AMP for a story I wrote, which was basically like, what is the value exchange on the internet, right? And it turns out that a lot of the sort of policing of the internet happens in that file named robots.txt. If you go to almost any website and then just put a /robots.txt, it'll pop up a text file that you can see that basically decides which crawlers from around the web are and are not allowed to go onto a website. So crawlers exist for lots of reasons. Many of them are from search engines, which are indexing the web in order to be able to send search results. Amazon has a crawler that checks for pricing around the web for what the government would say are extremely nefarious reasons, and Amazon would say are for legitimate business reasons. You might run a crawler to check all the links on your own site to make sure that they're still live. Like there are a lot of reasons to run crawlers. And this is like a technology from the early 90s that basically a bunch of people on a mailing list, including like Tim Berners-Lee and Mark Andreessen and a bunch of like early internet optimists decided is like, okay, you're just going to put up this thing that says essentially who's in and who's out. And everyone else who makes one of these crawlers is going to abide by those rules because we want the internet to work. We're all cool people. This is going to be great. That worked pretty well for a surprisingly long time. And now what's happening is if you run an AI company and you want to get a bunch of training data, you know what's full of training data is the internet. And so you just go, you crawl the whole internet, you pull all that stuff in, you dump it in, and you train your model on it. That's how you get recipes. That's how you get all this stuff. Like you just base it on all the stuff that exists on the public internet. And so now if you're a person who runs a website or a recipe blog or any number of other things on the internet, you have to go in and decide who's in and who's out with 1,000 new crawlers, a bunch of companies of varying levels of decency and sketchiness. OpenAI has been in a bunch of like media coverage about this because it actually told people how to block GPT-bot and promised to abide by it, and by all accounts is doing so. A huge portion of websites on the internet, including I believe all of Vox Media, blocked GPT-bot. The New York Times did. A lot of publishers have. But there are a lot of things out there that are either too small for now to even be known to these publishers, or just don't care. They just don't have to respect this little tiny text file that has no legal or technical authority. And so any AI that wants to come in just can. And that's just where we are. And we have just like broken this basic give and take that the internet ran on for so long. And like I talked to Tony Stubblebine, the CEO of Medium, who has been a big proponent of kicking out the bots in this particular way. And what he said is basically like, we're getting nothing out of this exchange. They're just taking everything from us and telling us that, you know, it's for the good of society. And like, screw that. That's not how the internet works. That's not what we're after. And I think everyone on the internet now is starting to have to make that exact same set of decisions.
And what's fascinating is OpenAI only made GPT-bot blockable after they had scraped the internet.
Correct.
Like...
And I honestly think that they did that so that media organizations, and I'm not privy to what Vox Media does at that level. I don't know why they did that or didn't do that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they did it so media organizations, companies could block OpenAI and then and feel like they had some control, and then OpenAI could go make a deal. Right. And be like, oh no, you took the control away from us.
No, that is, I will say that is precisely why. I mean, I talked to the OpenAI's chief strategy officer who said basically that exact thing, that this is a way to signal that you would like to make a commercial deal, and let's do it. And that is a pretty wild way of backing into something like that. But yeah, it's not an accident that OpenAI didn't tell people about GPT-bot until it had already been pretty far down the road.
Yeah.
Because without doing what it did, GPT-4 and ChatGPT wouldn't be as good as they are. Like that is the trade. But then the question is, who experiences the downside of that? Like, is that bad for the internet? Is it bad for the world? Or is it just bad for OpenAI? It's like, that's the question now.
Yeah. And I think individual creators are feeling the pain of this very deeply.
Yeah.
Even when we just write about neat AI tools, we get people who are sort of morally outraged that we would acknowledge that some of them are neat because it's built on something. It's built on some taking. And whether or not you think that taking is fair or not is sort of divorced from whether it's legal or not. And I don't know that anyone has quite figured that out, right?
Somebody needs to pop it into "Am I the Asshole" on Reddit. Like
that's what you need to do.
It's a perfect one, right?
And then you enter
Sam
all
Altman.
of that into the
asshole?
million token Gemini field. And like, is this correct?
Yeah, and then we send it to the judges, and we're like, look, we figured it out. The robots figured it out. They talk to each other. We got this. We know who the asshole is. That means who legally is right.
Again, I keep coming back to what I refer to as the endgame post.
Yeah.
Which is a person who's like, I love podcasts, but I don't have time for them. I just feed them into an AI, and then it's summarized. And it's like, dude, you just want articles.
Yeah. Just go read those.
What you want is articles. Like, just go read articles made by people who care about you. Like, it's a very simple way of getting what you want from the internet. Just read. Like, people would like to read. It is amazing that the broad future of computing is like more reading.
Yeah.
after all these, anyway, doesn't matter. I think that the turn for these AI companies, for OpenAI, for example, you can signal you want commercial deals, but they're being sued. So if you go out and make a bunch of deals, you're kind of admitting that you need the deals. And the New York Times is going to, or whoever else is suing OpenAI, Getty, suing Stability, is going to say, look, you know that you should pay money for this stuff. You didn't pay us to begin with. So you're on the, and that is a strategic nightmare for these companies.
It is. And I think James Kwan, the chief strategy officer at OpenAI I was talking to, one of the things he said is, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, is that OpenAI feels very strongly that ChatGPT should be mostly free for most people for exactly that reason. Like that's the value they believe they deliver back to the world, is that by giving to this system, you then get access to this system, and the increase in quality of this system is good for the world, and you can have it and it will make your life better. And I think you can view that as like dystopian Black Mirror nonsense, or you can view that as like a fair trade in the way that Google search was a fair trade. But like that is the dynamic that we're about to reckon with in a lot of really, really messy ways.
Yeah. And what is the most fascinating about all this, we can bring it all the way back around to Google. No one is going to block the Google bot.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like no one thinks it should be invisible from search. You can block
Torrent sites probably would. I don't know what
sometimes.
those are.
Alex's Plex server continues to rock and roll in the background. No one's blocking Alex's Plex server.
Usenet. Block.
You can block Google with some gradations. You can block Google search, which no one will do, and then you can block the other stuff. You can block Google's AI training, but no one is willing to say, I'm so mad at Google for scraping all of our stuff that we're going to block search. And I think that's when that one flips and people are like, it is worth it to be invisible to Google. Like the architecture of the internet changes.
Yes.
All right, we got to take a break. We're going to come back for the lightning round, sponsored by you. We're back. Do you remember when Time Magazine said the person of the year was you?
Ugh,
Yeah. And it was the like little mirror. It wasn't a real mirror. It's just like
That was when print magazines had budget to put mirror on the cover of magazines in every grocery store in America and be like, the person here is you. And it was like a foggy, people like holding their carrots, be like, what?
it's all like curvy, warped looking. It's
I'm
not
just
me.
here for milk, not conceptual print ideas.
So you're saying y'all didn't frame yours and put it up next to your other awards? That's not what you did? That's weird.
Donald Trump has like the fake one and then like, this one's real. Like it's me, you guys.
He looks at it every day.
It's like, it is me. I was for real that time. All right. I feel like all of my lightning round entries are just complaining about streaming the Super Bowl. So, Cranz, do you want to go first?
Mine is like I just find it fascinating. The big turn in the whole DMA thing with the European Union. iMessage is not found to be a what is it they call it?
Gatekeeper.
Yeah, iMessage is not found to be a core platform service. So that they're not going to make it open up, which feels probably right given that no one in the EU.
Well, this is the trade app.
Yeah.
They've notably made the trade of saying we will support RCS. And I think this is what they got in return.
Yeah. So they're free and clear, as are my personal favorite, Microsoft's Edge browser is not considered a core service. And Bing Search was found to not be a core service.
I don't think anybody has ever found Bing Search to be a core service.
No. I really loved that it was like, okay, iMessage. I'm like, damn it. And then Edge. And then Bing.
Not
You're
even
like,
the bureaucrats of the European Union to bring themselves to regulate Bing.
I wonder if they just like chuckled. They're like, oh, no.
One thing that is really interesting in the mix there is Apple broke web apps in the EU.
Mm-hmm.
So for a minute, it looked like Apple would support what's called progressive web apps on the iPhone, where you have a web app, you can save it to your home screen, you push the button, it loads up in a wrapper, and it feels just like a normal app. This is great. I think this is like, in terms of
That's how I do the Verge.
Yeah, that's how I do the Verge. That's how I do RCMS when I want to post a quick post really fast.
Ooh, that's smart.
I have a quick link that just opens up a web wrapper. It's not in Safari. And Apple broke it 2 betas ago in iOS 17. And they didn't say anything about why. And then today, they finally released a statement on their developer portal that's like, well, we have to support other browsers in iOS now, other browser engines. And as you know, they all have to be equal. So how could we possibly re-architect all of iOS to support launching a web app in another browser engine from the home screen? So we just shut it off. And it's like, dude, stop doing malicious compliance.
Yeah, like that was just like kicking and screaming. Like that's just a hissy fit.
Like, do you know what platform supports PWAs and allows other browser engines? Android. It's right there. Yeah. You can just look at it.
It's just whiny.
It's
like,
it's the most popular operating system on Earth.
Meanwhile, the other browser makers have spent the last few weeks making very clear to everyone that Apple has actually, if anything, made it harder to be a browser maker in the EU now, because you essentially have to run many different versions of your app inside your one app, and it's just going to make everyone's life impossible.
Apple, come on.
Great job, Apple.
Look, we don't talk about this aspect of companies very often. We treat companies as sort of singular entities. There's a real split inside Apple right now between the suits, basically, the policy and the business folks, and the very idealistic engineers who make the products.
Yeah.
And I think that this EU thing is really pushing on that split in a way that, you know, Apple is a very well-run company. They are mission-driven in their way. But I'm wondering how much of this stuff, where it's like a bunch of pretty bad faith responses to a law that's designed to make computers feel more like computers.
Yeah.
You just wonder, you know, like someone had to like write the code to break all the web apps in the EU.
Just like furiously.
Yeah, just like
suit standing over their shoulder, just like, I hate you so much right now, but I'm going to write the really good code.
Right. Like, yeah, some lawyer is like, do the malicious compliance.
Yeah.
You know, and they like file the JIRA ticket, and the JIRA ticket is just labeled malicious compliance. That's gotta suck. That's all I'm saying. Like on Decoder, I'm always asking about how decisions are made, but like how a decision actually gets implemented is equally interesting to me. It's like someone had to file the JIRA ticket. It's like per DMA, break web apps. That
there
sucks.
are just 3 levers in Tim Cook's office. One of them says ship the thing. The other one says buy that company, and the third one just says malicious compliance. And he just pulls it, and just like lights start flashing all over Apple Park, and that's how everybody knows.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something weird there that again, we usually think of companies as like singular entities.
Yeah.
Like there's Tim Cook in ARMS, you know, like, and like Tim Cook is in control of all the ARMS, or Sundar Pichai in ARMS, and the ARMS are like, who are you? Like, you made a messaging app? But these companies are tens of thousands of people, if not 100,000 people when they're at their biggest.
Yeah.
And they are not singular in that way. And this is the sort of thing that I think, I get that Apple's very mad at the Europeans. My caution is this is the sort of thing that breaks a very idealistic culture, because you have to make everyone believe that you are totally right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that this little move, which is a very cynical kind of move, is actually somehow idealistic. That's just complicated.
Yeah.
All right. I basically did a lightning round under your lightning round.
It was great. It was good. Well, yeah, we have
like
it in
an
the thing.
aftershock.
There's like a sub lightning round under it.
You can sponsor an aftershock. I don't know how to take your money.
I was just about to say that.
All right, David, what's yours?
Mine. Well, I'm gonna aftershock when we start complaining about the Super Bowl, so I'll come back to that. Mine was just, there was this news this week from a Wall Street Journal report that Walmart might buy Vizio.
Yeah.
Which I just find deeply fascinating, and also kind of to be a bummer. I feel like it wasn't that long ago that we thought Vizio had a chance to be a really interesting, forward-thinking player in TVs.
That was 2011. I wrote a profile of Vizio in 2011.
Was that 2011?
It was like when we launched.
Yeah, I guess
Echo
that's right.
was supposed to buy Vizio in 2017, and then after that, it just kind of started to slow.
The Echo. I totally forgot.
Yeah. And
They
then that fell
came,
apart.
they were like, TV, and then they disappeared, and then I could not get them to take the TV back.
Didn't they make a car at one point?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a truly weird.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my
that was just a psyop. That was a Chinese government psyop.
I loved that company. That was a good time.
But anyway.
yeah, but you remember that in 2011, I wrote the profile of Vizio. This guy, Matt McRae, was the CTO. He was a lot of fun. Do you remember they put out Windows laptops and he kept saying they were bone stock?
Oh, yeah.
It was great. All that was great. And they kept on trying to expand by doing like fan service, and the TV business was just their business. Matt is now the CEO of Arlo Cameras. And I think Vizio is just like really, they tried so many interesting things. Remember when the TVs were just Chromecast?
Yep.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Oh boy. But that's what everybody wanted.
In
This is like
practice,
actually-
no.
They had
Right,
like
this is
the
what I mean
Android
about
tablet
revealed-
that was the remote, right?
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is.
But this is what I mean
gonna
about
cause a
revealed
fire in
preferences.
my house one day.
Everyone in our audience is like, I don't want a smart TV. I just want a panel. And then they like ship the thing.
But it had no remote. We wanted a remote. I just want to be able to turn up the volume without having to charge my.
Everyone
damn
is like,
remote.
I just want a dumb TV. I don't want that. And then they shipped it, and they're like, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Give me a smart TV.
I like the day the update came, and I didn't even. It must have come months in advance, and I turned that TV on because it's like my bedroom TV, so it's never on. I turned it on, and I was like, oh, my Vizio is smart now, and it was much more usable. And then I was very upset because I was like, that wasn't the promise.
Yeah.
I got bummed.
It's revealed preferences, man. Everyone wants to run some weird data tracking smart TV operating system.
Yeah.
So $2 billion Walmart wants to buy Vizio.
Yeah, and it just feels like that's a lot of money also to basically improve its house brand of TVs, which is essentially what Walmart would be doing. I would remind you that its existing house brand is called On with two N's. So I would spend $2 billion to not have On with two N's as my house brand of anything.
Like Vizio's kind of gotten bodied by TCL and Hisense in the last few years in the budget TV market. So it's
Yeah, like what a bleak statement though, right?
Yeah,
like that
like-
the fact that that is true and that is true
Yeah.
is so it's such a bummer.
it's so,
the place
watching
the TV market is
Vizio
right now.
go from like it was such a good company because okay, you could get the TV in and it wouldn't necessarily be like you'd have to fiddle with it. You'd have to mess around. But then it could look really, really pretty and you'd be like, oh, holy crap, I spent like half of what I could have spent on an LG and I have a great looking TV. And now that's just not quite the case anymore.
And now
They
the
just
whole
got,
TV
like-
business is collecting data on people who watch you while you put up your webcam
Vizio
into
is one of
Nilay's
the
living
first.
room. Yeah, Vizio has been
Yeah,
doing
sued.
that.
Yeah, like Vizio was a really a thought leader in that department for a while there. Unfortunate for all of us.
Well, that's how they made the TVs cheap. I mean, this was
Yeah,
I
that was
would-
their like they essentially subsidized it, and then Roku came in and was like, we can do it better because our operating system is actually usable. And that's why Roku like partnered with Hisense. That's why they partnered with TCL. And now Roku is this really dominant force in advertising and in TVs. And Vizio's off in the corner being like, let go, I blame you for everything.
Well, Roku also came to people and said, we have an advertising business that we'll give you a cut of. And that has become a business for Walmart that it thinks it can do more. Like, it's just all, this is a lot of money being thrown around for big deals and big companies, and none of it is about making good televisions. And that
Yeah.
just sucks.
That sucks.
You know, it's a great television. It's a Sony A95.
That watches you while you're
I know. I
trying to watch
unplugged the
TV.
camera and I turned all this
Like,
stuff off.
try to join another meeting with that TV. Tell us how great
It's not going to
is.
happen. We're done messing with the features of the television.
Did you have to like go and put the webcam back in a box?
Oh, the webcam was like quickly discarded.
Yeah.
I've got a drawer that I just think of as the e-waste drawer.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe one day I'll be like, where is that webcam? And I'm going to open the e-waste drawer. It's going to be great.
Speaking of, let's complain about the Super Bowl.
All right. I have a lot to say about this whole situation. It is an embarrassment that in America, on the most watched Super Bowl ever,
Oh, Lord.
where America's sweetheart did something with Travis Kelce on that field.
She won the Super Bowl.
She won the Super Bowl. Actually, can I just say this other? There's a video clip of them running to each other after the Super Bowl, and they hug each other. And then finally, the clip with the audio came out because he was mic'd up,
Yeah.
and he's like, "I love you. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you. Thank you for flying halfway around the world." And then he says, "Was it electric?" And she's like, "It was unbelievable." I have asked Becky if shit was electric like 50 times a day since I've seen that clip. Like, I'm like pouring the coffee, like, was it electric? Easily the best thing to come out of the entire Taylor Swift Travis
That's
Kelce storyline to me.
fantastic.
It's just constantly asking Becky if things are, and she's like, no. Like she does not think it was unbelievable.
Shut down immediately. No.
Anyway, so Super Bowl not streamed in 4K, but kind of streamed 4K. So on Paramount Plus, I think, David, that's where you watched it.
That is where I watched it.
It was
That's where I
1080
watched 30
1080p.
minutes of it.
They only gave a 4K stream to cable companies. So nothing direct from CBS. So if you had cable or DirecTV, you could switch to a 4K CBS channel, which was upscaled 1080p HDR. So it already looked weird. one of the most vibrant cable companies in America is YouTube. So you have YouTube TV, you can pay for the 4K add-on, which I churned off of ages ago because it was not worth it. So I paid the $10 for 4K for the month, and I go to watch it, and the bit rate keeps crashing on YouTube TV. Just like I'm watching my router, it starts, at like 15 or 20 or whatever the 4K stream would be at. Not even that high. It's like 8. And then it just like just dropped like a stone.
That's brutal.
And I kept switching back to the 1080p feed on CBS, and it looked great.
Why didn't you
So I'm
switch
like, it's
over?
not my internet.
Switch over to Nickelodeon.
Everyone told me the Nickelodeon stream looked great.
It looked beaubeautiful.
Yeah.
Dora the Explorer explained what illegal holding is.
It's fantastic.
And now I know.
And at the end, they slimed everyone, I believe, on the field.
Yeah, that was good.
Just a disaster. And some people thought it was working great, but I posted on Threads like this bitrate keeps crashing, and too many people agreed with me that it was a bad experience for me to think that it was like my internet. I switched from the Apple TV, YouTube TV app to the Android app on the Sony TV, assuming that Google would, like a good gatekeeper, would preference its own service on its own operating system. It worked for slightly longer. It worked for 5 minutes before it crashed. But then it crashed.
Well, we hope it will make sense over time, Nilay.
Is Max Sports or whatever this new super sports streaming service called, is that going to save the Super Bowl? Once
Super Bowl
Paramount.
does not need to be saved.
Well, save it from bad streaming experiences.
I just think it is fundamentally embarrassing that we as a nation cannot figure this out. Like, you go to watch soccer in England and they're like, it's 10 4K feeds anywhere you want to be. It's free. And also there's free healthcare. And like, what are we doing?
As you said that, I saw like an American flag drop behind you, and I just like heard the American music.
Oh yeah, someone's getting mad at me for not being sufficiently patriotic that we have to watch upscaled 1080p.
No, I thought that was the most patriotic thing I've seen in a while.
We have to figure this out.
Fix
Vote
the Super
Patel.
Bowl. I also, speaking of sports, I made a big gaffe last week because I mistakenly said that Fox sports channels are owned by Disney, and that is only true in, I believe, Argentina and some parts of South America.
That's where all our listeners are. It's fine.
Yeah, it is not owned by Disney in America, where it is owned by
Fox.
Fox.
Right, Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, it's still owned by Rupert. I forgot, but Disney does own it, just not in this country. I'm sorry.
I would just like to say 2 things about that. 1, we screwed that up and it was complicated.
It was very
and bad.
embarrassing. I was annoyed.
2, it makes this whole thing even funnier because it now is even more like Hulu. It is 3 direct competitors being like, let's be best friends. We'll figure this out.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's so good. And it's also very funny if you go and look at Fox Sports on like the Wikipedia page and it says current owners, and there's a list of like 6 current owners depending on what region you're in. I was like,
That's good.
help out. Come on, Fox. Just one company own the company, please.
No, that's not. Rupert's breaking up his empire.
Yeah.
And by the way, you need Fox Sports because you have to have Fox Sports because of football.
I mean, I don't.
But the cable companies do.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And to get Fox Sports, you have to carry Fox News.
Right.
That's a real thing. They leverage each other. Fox News,
I mean,
I have a lot of feelings about Fox News. Fox News on its own popular, but they are a bundle deal.
Yeah, they are unstoppable.
You can't get football without taking the other thing. That's not a choice for you.
Right.
Which many cable operators have always sort of like been aware of.
Yeah.
That's America.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is we can stream it in 4K. How was Paramount Plus? I know you watched on Paramount
Okay,
Plus.
I would just like to briefly complain about this. I try not to use The Verge as a place to be annoyed at customer service things, but Paramount Plus sucked for me during the Super Bowl, and I'm very upset about it. So for a while, it just didn't work at all. It would throw up like a bad thing happened. We don't know. Try again. And then I would try again, and it wouldn't work. But eventually it worked, and it actually streamed fine and looked fine. But this incredible thing kept happening, which is that the audio would get about 8 seconds ahead of the video. And so literally every single time the play would have just finished before I saw the play. So Jim Nantz would be like shouting about how Brandon Ayuk caught it for 20 yards right as they're snapping the ball. It made it so unpleasant to watch this game. It was like I literally stopped looking at it for a while. I was like, I'm going to listen to this like it's radio. And Tony Romo's just going to say nonsensical things at me. But it was just, I would like try to pause and you can't because it's live and it's illegal to pause things or something, I would go out of the app and come back in and it would work fine, and then go back to being off by about the same amount. I rebooted my TV at one point. I did the whole Roku reboot at one point.
That's bad.
Oh, you were on a Roku. See, there was your problem.
Those letters bouncing at you when you want to watch TV, and it's like, doo-doo-doo.
Oh my gosh.
You got your food right in front of you.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm telling you,
worst.
watching those letters bounce when you reboot a Roku and you're just trying to get there. And was there anyone else in the room with you? It's like they're taunting you.
Yeah. I also think this was also a little bit like Paramount was getting back at David, particularly because he makes fun of how much I enjoy Paramount Plus.
I have said a lot
And
of
they were
mean
like,
things about Paramount Plus,
Yeah.
so I did deserve this. But
Yeah,
like,
this
we're
was-
square now, Paramount. Listen,
karma.
Sherry Redstone, we're cool now.
What heartened me was the number of people responding to my complaints about streaming sports on the internet by telling me to get an antenna. And I thought of you, Alex.
Aw.
I did not dig out an antenna with
Yeah.
15 people in my home. like
You're
like
just
I've
out in
already
the
switched
yard.
operating systems. We're not doing antenna runs right now.
It's great. It's a good time.
We did watch the halftime show at the low bit rate because I couldn't switch it to the other stream in the middle.
Did you watch?
Oh, can I
the
complain about
Apple
another
TV
thing about
version?
Paramount Plus?
Yeah.
So I, like the genius that I am, opened up Paramount Plus after one of my many reboots, clicked on the thing that said the football game, and it took me to a separate channel where they were talking about the football game. So I was
That's
like, oh,
good.
this is just the halftime show before the thing. And then Anna, my wife, gets a text from her friend being like, oh, are you watching Usher? He's sick. And I'm sitting there telling her that it must not have started yet. And it turns out that when I clicked on football, it didn't click on football. It clicked on something else for me and didn't. So I missed like 3/4 of Usher because it
Wow.
didn't select the thing that it was supposed to select.
You can watch it on the
Furious
Apple
about
TV app.
You're doing great, David.
I'm still angry.
I feel like a lot of your choices are your fault. Like
Usher took his shirt off, Nilay, and I missed it. I missed it.
You did.
I did see the roller skates though, so it was okay.
The roller skates were sick.
Can I just say it was electric? I want to just do a quick Atmos music update for everyone. We installed the big home theater in our house. It's done. If you've been listening to Vergecast since September when we moved into our new house, in the background has been construction sounds every time I record from my house because we've just been renovating. It's done now. Just only 2 things that need to be done. Who knows if they'll ever get done. But it's done, and the TVs are done, and we have a 5.1.4 Atmos system. It's cool.
Yeah.
I like it. And so I texted a friend who believes in Atmos music more than I do. I said, this is as much of a chance as I can ever give this boondoggle. And he sent me a list of things to listen to. Random Access Memories by Daft Punk, the Dua Lipa record, a bunch of other stuff. And so I listened to it. I was also told that Amazon Music is better. Their codec is better than Apple. So I comparing. I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
Really running it to ground. 2 things I've discovered. 1, the only idea anyone has is putting percussion accents behind you. Like someone rings a cowbell and it's like behind you. It's like ding, ding, ding. Like every song with anything like that. Like a tom fill, that's going around you. And that's what we got.
Yeah.
And we've solved that problem. Like in the manual of how to remix a song for Atmos, it's like if there's any sort of percussion accent, get it back there. 2, and I've been joking about this for, I want to say, over a year. In the Atmos remix of Come Together by the Beatles, George Harrison sneaks up behind you playing the guitar.
This is your dream. You've
Was
been
it like
waiting
a
for this.
slow sneak? Was it?
No, it's at the very end. You know, there's like little guitar like happening, Come Together, and it starts behind you, and then it comes in front of you.
It was like he was in the room with you.
Like each successive one gets closer and closer, and then it's in front of you at the end. And you have to understand, I'm like listening to this at like 11:45 p.m. alone, just cracking up, just losing my mind. Like this is the funniest thing that's ever happened. It's just like me rewinding Come Together over and over again and being like, no, that's real. It's very good. I encourage everyone to listen to it. We're done here. Atmos has been completed. We've solved it. It actually happened. It's very funny. It's
huge
like
for you,
deeply meaningfully funny. If you know of any other songs where the guitar player sneaks up from you, please let me know. It is my go-to demo song. Dare I say it's electric? All right, we got to end this show. Tom will be on to talk about some actual news that happened with Microsoft soon. We are now on the main YouTube channel, so go listen there. I want to call out, we started the second episode of Decoder. So we have 2 every week now. On Mondays, we do the big interviews, CEOs and so on. And then on Thursdays, we run Explainer with Verge reporters and other friends of the show, just figuring out big topics. This week was AI and copyright law, which is why I'm bringing it up, with Sarah Zhang, who is wonderful.
It's a good one. And it's like anyone who has been listening to us rant and rave about that will enjoy that. You should go.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then, David, you've got a big Right to Repair story on the Tuesday episode of Vergecast this week.
Yeah,
right?
so Will Poor, our newest producer, has been running around basically trying to figure out what in the world all of this Right to Repair stuff actually means. And he's going to spend a bunch of time this year telling us sort of different stories from different parts of the Right to Repair world. And his first one is coming on Tuesday. So the episode's going to be that. And Tom, it's going to be a fun episode. Definitely stay tuned.
Will's just going to fix stuff. So mail him your broken gadgets.
The end of this is definitely Will opens a repair shop. Like, there's just no question that's not how this ends. It's going to be amazing.
Finally, we're on one of those kiosks in the mall that can change your bad. It's always been our dream.
And then he'll sponsor the lightning round.
Should we call them aftershocks or shockwaves? Let us know. Vergecast at theverge.com. That's it. That's Vergecast. Rock and roll.
And that's it for the Vergecast this week. Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call at 866-VERGE11. The Vergecast is a production of The Verge and Vox Media Podcast Network. Our show is produced by Andrew Marino and Liam James. That's it. We'll see you next week.